And when I will discuss some important theory about missile damage application in frigate PvP, which will put into context some common feats that we will discuss later. And at the end, I will show you the engagement map for this frigate, and we will end up with Q&A. This whole class should take probably about an hour, maybe a little bit less. So here we go. Okay, first I would like to talk about this graph at the bottom of the slide. It shows the damage over distance for several Tech 1 frigates. The red line is Blaster Merlin, the green line is Rocket Condor, the orange line is Beam Executioner with X-ray loaded, I think, and the blue line is Kite Condor. So as you can see, every ship has a certain pretty small window where it performs better than the rest. And this logic applies to any frigate in even line. For example, if you take Blaster Comet against Rocket Hookbill, the graphs will look very similar to the one that you see here. And what does it mean for you specifically? Well, it kind of allows you to very briefly assess what kind of fight you can expect from a ship that's inside the plex or that's coming inside your plex. We will call all frigates that prefer to fight within 4 kilometers brawlers, all frigates that prefer to fight between 4 and 10 kilometers scrum kiters, because they usually fight at the edge of their scrum range. Frigates that prefer to fight between 10 and 13 kilometers web kiters, and the rest are kiters. And we have one specific type of brawlers which are fitted specifically to counter kiters, which is essentially brawlers but with micro warp drive scrums and webs. And you have this rock, paper, scissors logic where each style kind of counteracts a different style. So this is a kind of static assessment of the upcoming engagement. So for example, you are in Rocket Hookbill and you are about to slide into a Blaster Comet. Let's assume you know it's a Blaster Comet, and you know that the initial engagement will be a bit unfavorable because you will start a fight in a brawling zone which favors a blaster ship. And the second aspect, which is dynamic assessment of upcoming fight, is your ability to keep the engagement within the window that is favorable to you, or change this window into something that is more favorable. We will call it control, your ability to control the opponent within a specific zone of engagement. So again, for example, you are about to warp into a Blaster Comet in a Hookbill. Your static assessment is unfavorable, but your control is better because you have 2 webs against only 1 web on a Comet. So in theory, you should be able, as the fight progresses, to move the engagement from brawling range to scrum kiting range, which will be more favorable to you as a Hookbill. And because frigates are so squishy, they usually do not have any sustained active tank. These two concepts usually determine who wins or loses a fight. So if you are fighting in a range, at a range that is good for you, and you have the ability to control the fight to keep it within this range, you usually will have a very good chance of winning. And on the other hand, if you engage at a range that is not great for you and you do not have control to change it, then most likely you will lose. One example is a blaster comet that warps into a plex occupied by a rocket hookbill. In this case, the initial engagement range will probably be around scrum kiting zone because the hookbill has positional advantage and can determine the initial engagement range. And the whole fight will be in scrum range because hookbill has advantage in control. And most likely the blaster comet will lose this fight. So this is just to put into perspective the things that I will say later on. There are, of course, more into it. Different bonuses for ships can slightly change this logic, but in general, it's a good idea to think about frigate PvP in these terms, because it will make assessment of an upcoming fight pretty straightforward, especially as you get more experience into it. So now let's switch into Hookbill specifically. The big table on the left is just a copy-paste from a yearbook. It gives an overview of every frigate in the game, every, let's say, Tech 1, Navy, or Pirate frigate. I do not cover Tech 2 frigates as of now. And it gives you an idea what kind of styles can you expect from every frigate that's in the table. For example, you can say, okay, Hookbill, he will most likely will be scrum kiting ship, and sometimes it can kite. When you look at a Comet, okay, Comet is a brawler with blasters or scrum kiter with rails, and sometimes it can be fitted as an anti-kiter ship. And you can also look at the weapons and typical tank for every ship, as well as like my assessment onto how every ship performs in PvP. Specifically about Hookbill, this is a Caldari Navy frigate with 3 high slots, 5 medium slots, and 2 low slots, and bonuses to damage and velocity, which is essentially rocket range or light missile range. What does it mean for the feats and the approach to fight against this ship? So it can be fitted with rockets. In this case, it's a classic scrum kiter, and the bonus to rocket range gives it some flexibility in terms of initial engagement range, because your range with rage missiles, for example, will be about 13 kilometers instead of 9 on the unbonus ship. And it can also kite with light missiles, although it's pretty rare to see because Hookbill is pretty slow in terms of base speed. Also, I forgot to mention the means of control. This is primarily webs, which go into medium slots, base speed, which transitions into your afterburner speed, and maybe some electronic warfare, which is pretty rare, but occasionally you see it, like ECM drones help to reset control if our means won't help you. So for the hookbill, 5 medium slots means that it has a lot of control. You can fit easily 2 webs and something else in one of the medium slots, plus afterburner and scrum, which is pretty typical for any scrum range ship. Usually you will have advantage in control, but we will talk about it a bit later when we will go into specific fits. How does it perform in faction warfare compared to other frigates? On this graph you can see the number of 1v1 engagements on the x-axis and the average win rate on the y-axis. The win rate is calculated only for faction warfare systems and only against these ships that you will see on this graph. So basically all non-Tech 2 frigates. The main conclusion, it is one of the most popular frigates in the game. To be more specific, it's the third popular frigate behind Comet and Tristan. And in terms of win rates, it's probably second or third faction frigate behind Comet and maybe Navy Vigil. So very usable. You can have very good results with this ship. We will talk about how to get these good results a bit further down the presentation. Before going into specific fits, I want to talk about some important theory about missile application, because it will determine the fits and general approach towards engagement with the hookbill and against the hookbill, and not even only hookbill, but pretty much any missile frigate in the game. So, for example, let's say you want to scrum kite in a hookbill. You can scrum kite with rage armor or with faction armor. Both of them have sufficient range for a scrum kiting ship. Obviously, you want to select armor which will have the maximum applied damage. And what would it be? Would it be the rage or the faction? The difference between them, if you are not familiar with missile mechanics, is that the rage armor is a Tech 2 armor. It has shorter range, more theoretical damage, but worse application. So against ships like afterburning frigates, it will have a significantly worse application than faction. And faction armor is longer range, lower damage, but lower maximum damage, I should say, and better application. So how would it impact the fitting choice? We can expect that the majority of your fights will be against afterburning frigates, because it is faction warfare and the vast majority of your targets will be just afterburning frigates. So how is different ammo applies to an afterburning frigate? As an example, I just took a very basic blaster comet fit and put it into PIFA to calculate the effective damage. So as you can see, we have 4 identical fits, but the only difference is what kind of armor we are using and how many webs are in the fit. So let's compare the situation where we use only one web. This is a red and the green lines at the bottom. In this situation, the faction armor is better than the rage armor. But if you go into two webs, which is orange line and blue line, you will see that rage armor has more damage. And if you compare two lines related to rage armor, which is orange and green, and two lines related to faction armor, which is blue and red, you will see how much application for rage armor drops if you apply only one web. And for faction armor, this drop is significantly less. So what's the takeaway? The takeaway is that you always want to have two webs in your feed if you plan to use rage armor, which is pretty much always, because it's 40% additional damage since a surgical strike buff in April 2020. This is applicable for fights against afterburner frigates. And an important comment here is that even against two webs, when your opponent hits afterburner, you will not get full application with rage rockets, but it will be enough to outdamage faction anyway. So the takeaway, if you are fighting against missile ship, you should always hit your afterburner, because it will help to mitigate some damage no matter what. Against other types of targets, for example, frigates with MWD, you can have only one web to outdamage faction with rage. But obviously there will not be many fights against frigates with MWD in faction warfare. The vast majority will be afterburners. And against larger ship you can pretty much always load rage. You don't really care about the number of webs. The signature radius and speed will not be sufficient to mitigate the rage damage anyway. Okay, so now you will have a better idea why all standard feeds for Hookbill and actually many other missile frigates are kind of similar. This is because of this logic, because you need two webs to apply with rage, and generally you want to use rage because you just get so much more damage compared to faction. Alright, now let's talk about most common fits. I will go from the most popular to the least popular fits for Hookbill. So basics that you will see on pretty much every fit. We will first cover all scrum kiting fits. So obviously 3 rockets in high slots, afterburner, 1 web, and scrum always. And actually usually you should pretty much always have a second web as well, for the reasons I talked just before. And usually you have damage control as well, simply because it gives quite a lot of hit points for a frigate. So essentially what you're left with is 1 low slot and 1 medium slot, and the selection of rigs. For the rigs you generally want 1 DPS rig, because you have no space for ballistics here, and in general in frigate PvP ballistics take too much CPU to be viable, so generally your DPS module in any missile frigate will be the rig. And when 2 rigs are kind of free, you can choose whatever you want to use here. So most of the variations will be around 1 medium slot, 1 low slot, and 2 rigs. The rest is kind of standard. Okay, so the most popular fit is medium ancillary shield booster in the medium slot, MASB for short. It kinda looks like a very beefed up breacher. So you have quite a lot of tank after you use your ancillary reps properly. You have pretty decent damage, 240 with no drugs or implants for a scrum kiting ship is pretty respectable. You don't really need to carry any refits. This fit works against pretty much any ship in your engagement range. And if you want to make it better without actually investing anything into the fit, you can do it pretty easily just by using blue pill, hard shell, or even crystal sets if you really want to extract maximum out of this fit. What are the weaknesses? Well, it's pretty predictable. From my experience, this is probably like 3 or 4 hookbills out of 10 will be fit this way. So people will expect you to fight in a specific way and they can prepare. If you are new, managing 2 ancillaries can be a bit tricky. It's a bit easier when on the breacher because hookbill doesn't have an ancillary rep bonus, but it still can be a bit difficult if you're just starting out. And this ship doesn't really work against stronger ships. For example, you cannot really kill a properly fit destroyer because you just don't have a proper mitigation against like a artillery thrasher, for example. The next fit, which was very popular probably about 1.5 years ago, like the majority of hookbills back then were like fitted like this. So what are the differences? You just remove a shield ancillary booster and fit tracking disruptor or missile disruptor. This is a short abbreviation for tracking disruptor TD, and MD is missile disruptor. And you swap shield rigs for bulkheads because now the majority of your tank is not in the shield but in the hull, and the rest is the same. So how does this fit work? Basically, you replace a tank with effective hit points with a tank with damage mitigation. So yes, your effective hit points are significantly less if you count the medium ancillary charges, but you will also take significantly less damage thanks to tracking disruptors. This fit is it's better in some ways and it's worse in some ways. The biggest advantage, I would say, is that it's very flexible. You can fight more ships in this fit because against some ships you just have so much damage mitigation that you don't really care about hit points and your DPS because you will kill someone anyways because you're not taking too much damage. And it's much easier to fit and micromanage in terms of module management. But of course you need to carry refits because you cannot engage any missile ship with tracking disruptor. You need missile disruptor against missile ships. I think this was changed many years ago. Back in the day we had a single module which was good both against weapons and against missiles, but it's no longer the case. So you need to refit all the time. For example, if you see a hookbill in the Plex, you need to dock and fit a missile disruptor instead of tracking disruptor. Cannot engage missile ships in with tracking disruptor. You just have 4 medium slots instead of 5, basically. You need to understand a bit better how to approach some fights. because it may not be just Scrum Kite against everything. For example, let's say you are in this fit with missile disruptor, and you are about to enter a plex with Hookbill inside. And as you land, you see that Hookbill is on 0. What kind of script do you need to use? The correct answer is that you need to use application disruption script, not optimal range disruption script. And you still try to burn away. And if you manage to burn away at the Scrum kiting range, when you swap your tracking disruptor into optimal range and force another Hookbill to reload from rage to faction. But if you land and you see that Hookbill is 10 kilometers away, then you need to use optimal range disruption, because you will instantly force another Hookbill to reload into faction. And same goes against comets, for example. So you land and you see a comet at 0. You don't know if it's a blaster fit or if it's a rail fit. So while you have an invul on landing, you need to right click on a ship and check his guns. And if he is rail fit, then you need to use application disruption orbit 500. And if he is a blaster fit, then you need to load optimal range and Scrum Kite. This just takes a bit of practice, because you need to make very quick decisions on the fly, depending on the information that you get inside the plex. You cannot really prepare for it, and it requires a bit of experience. So this can be a bit difficult to use if you are new. I would recommend the previous fit if you're just starting out and want to get a hang of his ship. Okay, now we are going into less popular fits, but they're still viable. We have again shield tanking Hookbill, but this time it's buffer tank. So no ancillary reps anywhere, just pure buffer hit points. It works similarly to the very first fit, which is medium ancillary shield booster, but there are 2 or even 3 kind of weaknesses of this fit. It's a bit difficult to so-called upscale to make it better. Like no real cheap implants or boosters will work, because it's just a buffer fit. You can get Nirvanas, but if you're willing to invest into Nirvanas, you don't really probably consider this fit as a viable choice. It's kind of awkward to fit. As you can see, this fit has a compact afterburner. Obviously, you want Tech 2, but if you fit Tech 2, then you will be short on CPU. And if you have some implants, it gets kind of awkward. Or if you jump between different clones, you can't really use this feed because you won't have a 601 implant for CPU. So it's just kind of awkward. And your warp scrambler is not Tech 2 because it doesn't fit properly. So you need to make a lot of compromises in terms of how you fit your medium slots. It's always on a timer. So with ancillary shield booster, you generally can just reload, click repair, roll with paste, and you are good to go again. But with this fit, if you just had a fight, you start looting, and when you see another ship on scan, you have to leave grid and repair because your shields just won't regen in time. This can be a bit annoying as well. But of course, it's very simple. Like, you have pretty much nothing in terms of module management, just guns and tackle. nothing else. You have pretty respectable damage, higher than with other feats, but not overwhelming. I think people that are ready to fight standard hookbills will be ready to fight this one as well. They won't miss like a repair cycle or anything. So it's a decent choice, but it's way less popular than the two feats that I showed you before. And it's also a bit expensive because you kind of have to use faction medium shield extenders, otherwise this just doesn't work. And it goes up to 30 million against 20 million for two previous feats. Okay, this one is I think it's better in terms of your engagement profile than the previous feat, but it's quite rare as well. This is a polarized hookbill. Occasionally you will encounter these feats. They are very unpredictable. If you don't think about the possibility of engaging a polarized hookbill in a plex, you will just get blasted, because you can easily go up to 450 DPS with a couple of cheap implants and drugs. And this is pretty much blast a comet level at the optimal. So you can actually win some fights just because people don't expect this amount of damage coming their way. I myself, I think, lost 2 or 3 fights while I wasn't even pointed to polarized hookbill, because I just didn't expect to have so much damage land on me. Like against comets, like a dual web cheese comets, you kind of expect it. So you land on a comet and you immediately align out to a celestial. So if you see that 2 webs landed on you, you just click warp off, and no problem at all. But against hookbills, you obviously don't really do it because you just don't expect that hookbill will dish out 450 DPS on you. But there are downsides as well, of course. First one, you have to be in position. You cannot really fight out of position with this fit. For example, you cannot outbrawl a comet at 0, obviously, because comet will have a similar DPS but almost double your tank. And it's pretty expensive. Again, it's even more expensive than the previous one. You can go up to 50 million, I think, with this fit, even if you use no blink at all. So it's 2.5 normal hookbills basically for one of these. Final one. We are done with scrum kiting hookbills. We are now into the final fit, which is kiting light missile hookbill. This used to be one of the most popular feats around 2014, 2015, before CCP nerfed light missiles. Nowadays it's pretty rare, but it's kind of viable still, especially considering that people will generally expect scrum kiting feats, and if you just chill in a plex, it's quite likely that someone in an afterburner frigate will warp into you and you will just pick him apart because he can't do anything. With Slicer you can't really do it because everyone expects that Slicer will kite, and if someone warps into Slicer, you're almost guaranteed to get some kind of anti-kite feat, which is pretty tricky to deal with. But with this one, many people will just expect scrum kiters and go into you, and you can kill them. And you can also kill a lot of destroyers as well, because they will not have enough projection against tracking disruption and your range, which is also nice. And you can warp into many destroyers because they don't really have a lock-in sufficient lock-in speed to tackle you before you go into your typical 20-kilometer orbit. So it's kind of nice. You get slightly different engagement profile. You get some easy kills, but you can't really breach any plexus with this feat. By breaching, I mean if someone in an afterburner frigate sits inside and you warp into it, you generally won't be able to burn away because hookbills are just very slow, not really agile, so it's kind of difficult to escape scrums on a warping. But beside that, it's okay. You just have to be prepared that it will take an incredibly long time to kill an afterburner frigate because your application is pretty terrible. You will have to use faction armor, I think, against afterburner frigates, and this is just really poor damage. But it's typical for any light missile kiting ship. So if you fight in space where your opponents can get some backup, it may be not a good choice simply because you won't have enough time to kill them before backup arrives. Okay. Now let's talk about what you can and cannot fight in like an average hookbill fit. This is another graph similar to the one I showed earlier, but it is calculated only for hookbill. So this is how many fights we had in faction warfare with hookbill against each of these ships, and this is a win rate. So as you can see, hookbill against hookbill is a mirror, 50%. Okay, so what you can fight? You can fight any Tech 1 frigate, no problem at all. You just have to keep in mind some very rare hard counters, like kiting condors, for example. If you warp into kiting condor, it will be quite tricky to escape if condor pilot is competent. Kiting Tristan is also can be a bit annoying, but you probably can kill all the drones before he can kill you, especially if you are in ancillary fit. But for the rest, it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Obviously, don't brawl things like incursuses at 0. You have to scrum kite them or merlins. But again, if you know how to set up a fight, it should be pretty easy. You can fight all Navy frigates. Here only the most popular are shown. So if you don't see, for example, Heron Navy issue, it just means that it had probably less than, 50 fights. Obviously, don't fight kiting slicer with afterburner hookbill. You're just gonna get killed. Vigil fleet issue can be a bit tricky out of position if he is web kiting, but against scrum kiter you're okay. Against Comet you can warp under Blaster Comet because you have sufficient range control to at least burn away from scrum and warp out if you're running out of tank. So against Comets you generally can fight whatever out of position or in position, doesn't matter. Rail, Blaster, you can find any of them. Against Tech 1 destroyers, it depends a bit on the fit. You can kill Blaster or Rail, Cormorants and Catalysts and Coraxes. You can kill pretty much any of them. Thrashers, it will be a bit tricky against artillery thrashers. You can't really do anything against artillery thrashers without scrum. So if we fit 2 webs, you have to warp out immediately. But against 1 web, you can do something. Autocannon thrashers, you can kill them. It will not be easy, but you can. Same deal with coercers. Good feats, probably you won't be able to kill them. Bad feats you can engage and kill. Algoses are always tricky because of drone damage. Sometimes you can, but generally you can engage any Tech 1 destroyer if you know what you're doing, because you will always have control over engagement. So if you feel like you are losing the DPS race, you generally should be able to warp out if you know how to position yourself to have some kind of celestial behind you. Otherwise, of course, you may get blocked by a artifrash or something like this. Against Navy destroyers, I wouldn't really recommend. Like, fights against thrashers or coercers are pretty tricky to begin with, and against Navy issues is just really hard. I personally do not engage this class of ships unless I fly some kind of stupid hard counter, like a kiting hookbill against, I don't know, blast a cormorant or something like this. These ships just have very strong bonuses on projection and application, and you can't really escape sufficient damage. You can't mitigate sufficient damage to win against them. And if you can't mitigate, then you just gonna die, because they have so much more damage and DPS. You can fight some assault frigates. I think the only exception is Hawk, and Wolf will be quite tricky. Hawk because it's just a better hookbill in every aspect, and Wolf again, it just has quite a lot of application into scrum range, even if you attack and disrupt him. The rest I think are pretty engageable. Again, generally you will have control in fights against assault frigates, so usually you can't simply escape if you feel like a fight doesn't go your way, but you need to play it smart and position yourself well against a Celestial. Yeah, and you have to remember when fighting Tech 2 ships that Hookbill is kinetic locked. You have bonus damage only for kinetic, and Caldari and Galente Tech 2 frigates will have Tech 2 resists against kinetic. So you probably need to switch into some other type of rockets. You will get, I don't really remember the exact math, but I think you will get more effective DPS if you shoot into the resist hull of a Tech 2 frigate with an unbonused rocket instead of using bonused rocket against profile resist. Pirate frigates, you can fight some weaker ships, like Kruor is killable. Some other feats are killable, like you can kill daredevils if they are blaster feat with MWD and you're in position. It's generally a favorable fight, but it will be quite tricky. So again, like if you are just starting out, this group is probably, I would exclude it from your engagement profile if you are new. But if you are experienced, you can attack some of these ships. And more powerful ships, not really feasible, like pirate destroyers, Tech 2 destroyers, Tech 3 destroyers, not really. There are some exceptions, but generally just avoid. And for the same reason, larger ships, you just don't have enough DPS and tank to do anything against any reasonably fitted cruiser, for example. You can't annoy him for a while, but I don't think you can kill him. Yeah, I think this is everything I wanted to cover. Let me just check for any questions. Yeah, if you have any questions, then please ask on Mumble or on Discord. We still have 14 minutes, so I can talk about something that I maybe not covered in sufficient detail. How do you ensure that you're in position in faction warfare when on a Plex site? Well, you just you pick a range relative to a warping point. You will have you will see on your overview or on your screen a small beacon. The beacon on when you land in a Plex, you land on top of that beacon, plus minus a few kilometers. So by default, you simply position yourself at the range that is most suitable for your ship. So if you are in a hookbill, you generally just chill around 9 kilometers. And when you look at what's coming your way, if there is a comet, then probably it's a good idea to stay around 9 kilometers. If it's a slicer, then you just burn to the beacon and try to catch him, because most likely he will be a kiting fit, and so on. So you just pick, to summarize, you just pick a certain range that is most suitable for your ship, and then you adjust according to what type of ship is coming inside your Plex, and that way you always have a positional advantage. I can also briefly give you an overview of what kind of the most popular fights basically that you can expect in faction warfare, like, very quickly. Against comets, if you are in position, generally simply scrum kite, and then see what kind of fit is the other comet is using. You have to be aware about comets with two webs, especially if you are warping into them. But overall, it's pretty straightforward. Also, if you warp inside the Plex, and you just have to check what kind of guns the comet has. You cannot blindly assume that it's a blaster comet, because if it's a rail comet and you just start scrum kiting, it's a bad strategy, because you just make his job much easier by running away with zero transversal. Against slicers, it's very simple. Don't fight out of position. Fight only in position and try to catch them. If some kind of weird brawling fit, you should be able to kill them. Hookbills, it really depends on what kind of fit you are running, especially if you're using tracking disruptors or missile disruptors. So it's very big topic, dependent on the fit. Tree stance, again, if you're out of position, you kind of roll a dice a bit in terms of whether he is kiting or not, but I would advise to take any fight against Tristan. It should be very favorable. Same with Rifter, no, it shouldn't pose any problems. Firetails, arty firetails can be a bit tricky, especially if they are in position, but you won't be able to close distance because they will have control, they're faster and they have 2 webs, but you should be able to out damage them and basically force them off a grid generally. And the rest is pretty simple, take 1 stuff. Okay, do we have any more questions? I think no. Okay. Yeah, I plan to do additional classes like this for other popular frigates, Comet, Slicer, and other stuff, a Firetail. So yeah, if you are interested in one of them, then please come. In any case, I will try to make a recording for every class, and I'm trying to find a feedback link, class feedback link. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, please leave your feedback. I will take it into account, maybe adjust some things for the future. And yeah, thank you for coming, and hope to see you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you for the class.
Thank you.